Dando murdered by the establishment.
So Jill Dando was looking at exposing something which potentially might have brought down the establishment. So she gets shot in the face. Jill Dando was looking at a ring within the British entertainment establishment. Bear in mind, she turned around and said, Cliff Richard is not the Christian man you think he is. They dispatched 23 ambulances to the crime scene to stitch up someone with special needs. We've seen that before.
Have you ever worried for your own life because of what you speak out about?
Of course, and there was genuine threats to my life. I have been warned by them to back off. And if Jill Dando was sniffing around organised criminality involving children, then she is in very, very dangerous territory.
I wanted to talk about something today, which for me and for a lot of people out there, it's always been, it's an unresolved murder case, which has always been shrouded in what I believe to be mystery, corruption, and some kind of, it feels like some kind of cover up, and we're not getting the whole truth. And it is the murder of Jill Dando. Jill Dando was obviously well known back in the 90s, probably even earlier, before my time. She did Crime Watch and the news and stuff like that. So on the morning of the 26th of April 1999, Jill Dando was shot dead outside her home in Fulham, southwest London, prompting the biggest murder inquiry conducted by the Met Police and the country's largest investigation since the hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper. A local man named Barry George was convicted and imprisoned for the murder, but after 8 years in prison, he was acquitted following an appeal and retrial. We'll get right into that. No other suspect has been charged with Dando's murder, and the case remains unsolved. And the question that many people have pondered, I'm one of them, for all these years, is, was Jill Dando murdered by the establishment? There was noise, speculation that she was making a documentary and that the powers that be, I don't know who those powers are, I don't know who pulls the strings at the top, but that the word got out that she was outing some people. It could have been your Savills, could have been your Rolf Harris. It could be someone we don't even know about now. Do you believe that it's more than she was just randomly shot on a doorstep and that she was trying to be silenced or stopped from making the documentaries?
I mean, if we look at things that have happened in the past, there was a case of a young girl called Leslie Mulseed, and Leslie Mulseed went missing. I can't remember the exact date, maybe it was the 80s. And one of the Yorkshire constabularies that was dealing with her stitched up a guy called Stefan Kitschko. And Stefan Kitschko had learning difficulties. And there was all sorts of evidence that aired on his innocence. Yet the senior investigating officer pursued with it, and Stefan Kitschko went on to do 15 years hard time in Strangeways prison. He was beaten on almost daily basis. He was totally unaccustomed to that sort of way of life. So it was a massive culture shock. And he was finally exonerated. And he was released on an appeal and he was exonerated. And the senior investigating officer on that went on to take on the Ripper inquiry and balls that up. So, you know, a curious thinking mind would say something here stinks. And I would say that the same vibe would be for Jill Dando. No one else, you know, the advancements that we've got in forensic investigative abilities, procedures, you know, what is at the police's disposal? It was a broad daylight assassination. They stitched up, if that's how we're led to believe, because the guy, you know, did get off on an appeal, which legally state that he's innocent. I met him, Barry Bulsara, aka Barry George. I met him once at the High Court, and you know, I'm not decrying him, but he's not the full shilling. You can generally see that the guy has got learning issues. So would it have been difficult to stitch him up? Probably not. If we look again at the case of Colin Stagg, who was accused of killing Rachel Nickel on Wimbledon Common back in the 80s. And the senior investigating officer had this entrenched mindset that it was Colin Stagg. And even when Stagg was acquitted on an appeal after doing a couple of years in prison, this senior investigating officer, the arrogance of this man, he turned around and said, we will not be looking for anyone else. It is Colin Stagg. It just been proved it wasn't.
Yeah.
And a few years later, a guy called Robert Napper, and the reason I had some sort of connection with this, because Robert Napper had killed a woman called, I think her name was Jacqueline Bissett, in Plumstead in southeast London when I was a probationary police officer. And he not only did he kill her, he killed her daughter as well, and he butchered them in almost a Ripper-esque style. And he actually confessed to his mum. He was a total a nutcase, and he was a very, very dangerous man. And he actually went to his mum and said, "Look, I've done someone else. I've murdered someone else." And that was actually Rachel Nickel. And he went to the police, and they told him to F off. So this guy stating with all the experience he purportedly had on investigating, he was a load of shite, because it wasn't Colin Stagg, it was Robert Napper. And Robert Napper did admit to it and went on to serve life, and a very dangerous individual he is. So do the police make mistakes? Yes, they do. Do they stitch people up? Yes, they do. I worked with a guy that was one of the senior investigating officers on the Diana inquiry.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, anyone who thinks that Lady Diana's death was a car crash is an effing idiot. Right? And he said, she was killed. And there's a cover up around her murder. One of the most high profile investigations ever, in which we see people like Michael Mansfield getting involved. Was justice served? No, it wasn't. Because and that's probably the nearest we'll get to this quote that you made about the establishment. I have been contacted by the intelligence services myself and told me to sort of ease up on what I've been doing in respect to my campaigning against child abuse cover-ups. Look at the works of Mike Veal, who even went as far as to expose and investigate, the abhorrent, nefarious activities of former Prime Minister Ted Heath. And look what they did to Mike Veal. And if Jill Dando was sniffing around organised criminality involving children, then she is in very, very dangerous territory, because I've been there. I've had the threats.
Right, you can relate.
Yeah, I know. It's a dangerous, dangerous game. But that entertainment industry is a dangerous, dangerous game. And anyone who sits there that was at the same level she got to and says they never saw it, I would just call them one thing. I'll call them a liar.
Yeah.
It is convenient for people to look the other way, because it means they lose their income if they don't. It means they have to make a moral decision to do something about it. And there's very few that do. When they've done, research into group mentality, such as the stuff involving the Stanford Institute in America, the findings were really bizarre, because it says that when you've got a group of 15 people with some unifying aspect, now that could be police officers in a uniform, and the uniform could be like a fully regalia and everything else, or it could be something as very minor as the same sunglasses. It's a cohesion. It has a unifying effect on them. And they found that consistently, when there is malpractice, only 1 in 15 will stand up and do the right thing. 1 in 15.
That's shocking. Shocking number.
But it's humanity. It's humanity. It's what people do. They don't step out. They follow the crowd. And we've got to be careful, and we've got to use our mind. God gave us a phenomenal brain, and we must use it when we're looking at these things. And if we ever expect the government, the police, the institutions, the establishment to tell the full truth, then you know, we're stupid. I have been warned by them to back off because I was in a position where I could have caused political instability because I had such a radical following regarding child abuse cover-ups.
Have you ever worried for your own life because of what you speak out about?
Of course, and there was genuine threats to my life. There was even the cabinet minister for policing and crime told me that there is a possibility that if I continue, that I'll be gone. He stood up in a meeting, parliamentary meeting, in front of the head of the Home Office, which was an MP called Nicholas Hurd. I was present at the meeting, and he turned around and said, had he not have intervened and assisted me, he had genuine belief that John Wedger would not be alive to this day. I wasn't backing down.
Good, and nor should you.
But the problem is, how far do you want to take it? How far does any individual want to take it?
How far do you want to take it? Are you are you going to carry on campaigning even at the risk of your own life?
No, I think I've done enough. I think I've done enough. Everything now for me will probably be anecdotal. Okay. I've done my share. You know, I nearly lost my children, which I think was a hugely reckless thing to have done. And it carries on anyway, regardless of my voice. But I like to think that my voice has gone some way in waking people up. This is not a conspiracy. If we naively expect real open honesty and transparency in cases such as Jill Dando, I think we're going to go through life disappointed.
Did you hear about this documentary that she was allegedly making? There's been a lot of noise about that she was making something. It mustn't have been for the BBC because I think she worked for them at the time on Crime Watch.
Okay, well, let's look at someone like John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
He came very vocal in speaking out, not just against, you know, the higher up government, the shadow government, but he spoke out against Freemasonry, and he spoke out against the mafia. He was calling them out, and you know, in the mafia, they have to take 3 oaths, and they take a blood oath, and they take something else. It's very demonic. So what did they do? They put out a warning to the whole world by shooting him publicly in the face, right? So you can't get, you know, much more than that. To do a public execution with the boldness and the viciousness of that sends out a clear warning.
To a president as well.
The president, yeah. And the same as if we look at Jill Dando.
Yeah.
If she was, which I think there's every chance she probably was, trying to speak out.
Yeah.
Because bear in mind, she turned around and said, Cliff Richard is not the Christian man you think he is. You know, and I've got my own opinions on that guy. And I'm not a fan. And I'll tell you that now, I'm not a fan. But I'm not.
Do you care to go into it, or would you rather not?
No, because it's libelous and it will cause us a world of great.
Yeah, you get more shit than it's worth.
Yeah, it's not worth it. You know, they did a daytime execution on her. But what was very strange was that the LAS, the London Ambulance Service, dispatch service, they dispatched 23 ambulances to the crime scene and double man crews, right? So we're talking 46 people. She's laying there dying from a shotgun wound, not a shotgun wound, from a pistol wound, right? Now, what is crucial in any major crime is a preservation of evidence.
Yeah.
First thing first, preserve life. Over anything else, you must preserve life. But to do that, you are going to disrupt evidence. You are going to sully the scene. You are going to contaminate the scene. Now, 1 or 2 people going on there, you will account for that. So as an investigator, you turn up, you need to know who were those on scene. And they can be eliminated through their footprints, their fingerprints, their DNA and everything else, right? And so if you take, I say this many times, if you take the perfect crime scene would be a field of pure white snow, right? And any adulteration footsteps in there, you need to account for that, right? And as time goes on, it will get adulterated. And you need to explain that in a crime scene log. That's where you see these officers there with the logging names in. And that then goes through for the court. And so you can account for who came and who didn't come on the scene.
Mm.
And whoever's left over, maybe that's your suspect. Okay.
Yeah, clever.
But if you've got 46 pairs of boots, right, treading all over a crime scene, well, there's no crime scene. It's gone. It's finished. So that crime scene. So what used to happen when in the late 80s, early 90s, when the so-called yardies, the Jamaican organised criminals, came over here to raise money for political funds back in the unofficial civil war in Jamaica, right? They they called them the gunman and all this other sort of the bad man and all that sort of nonsense. But they were executing people in these drug turf wars. And one of the traits of the yard is what they'd do if they'd shot someone, they would turn up at the crime scene and they'd put headphones on and they would make out that they were, elsewhere in their mindset. And they would deliberately walk through the police cordon onto the crime scene. And of course, the officer would then drag them back. They would be very subservient, very apologetic, and they would be then compelled to give their details to that officer under common law, which they would comply with, right? So when the investigation from Operation Trident or whoever was running them in them days took place, and then they found, the presence of a suspect on the scene, and they went and dragged the guy in, his excuse would be, yeah, of course my DNA was on the scene, of course my fingerprints were there. The officer knows because I gave them to him. And that would be enough to cause a reasonable doubt and get them eliminated or thrown out as a suspect. So the main thing you've got to do then is you've got to dirty the crime scene. And that was done. The dispatch, who sent them ambulance crews? I don't know. Who instructed my commanding officer to threaten me with the loss of my home, my job and my children for exposing similar crimes to what you're alleging Jill Dando did? I don't know. Will we ever find out? No. Because the one thing is for certain, when you're dealing with corruption, malfeasance, they will lie and they will deny.
Mm-hmm.
And if you expect them to play with a straight bat, you're a fool. You're entering a very dangerous game and the rules will not be in your favour. So don't bellyache when they pull underhanded strokes, because that's what they're going to do. Ain't no one ever beat the establishment. Some people have victories and some people get out with it. Like so myself, Lenny Harper, Mike Vill. But we come out very tainted, mentally broken, financially broken, and very, very wounded. But very aware of how far the government will take it. And ultimately, they will take it to death, because dead men tell no tales. So I don't think it's beyond the realms of reasonability and probability that what you're stating could have happened to Jill Dando actually did happen. And
well, to send 23 ambulances, like that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen by accident.
No.
92 footprints knocking around the crime scene. It's not an accident, in my opinion.
Plus, you've got all the officers, the first responders on the scene. You've got members of the public, So it was chaos. It was chaos. That the crime scene was decimated. And then to stitch up someone with special needs, we've seen that before. That's not the first time that's happened.
Can you tell us more about your meeting with Barry George and what you got from his personality, his character? Was this before he was acquitted you met him, or after?
Yeah, after. I don't know the guy, so I don't know what he's capable of. I've not read any of the disclosure relating to him. I've not read any of the unused material relating to him. I don't know what his mental history is. But, when you talk to him and when you look at him, he isn't fully there. Maybe they call it now autistic, ADHD, I don't know. He's not the full shilling. Will he be capable? I don't know. I mean, people are capable. I worked with autistic kids for 3 years, and some of the violent non-verbal ones, were dangerous. Mm. God bless them. I'm not decrying them because, they're afflicted, and I've genuinely loved my job with them. But, some of them were so incredibly violent. They would seriously, and they did. seriously hurt people. They did. It happened daily. But so I don't know what his mindset, his capability is. But when we look at what has happened in the past with cases like Stefan Kitchko, the Leslie Mulseeds, we start seeing a pattern that it's not the first time they've done it, and it has to be credible what they do, because when there's a murderer on the loose, the public needs safety, and there will be a dire need, pressure on the police for the for the suspect to be caught, right? So, what does it matter if it's a group of suspects? Well, as long as one's nicked, like the Yorkshire Ripper, I generally don't believe he was working on his own. I think there was a bigger thing going around him. And there was rumours that Savile was involved.
Yeah.
But he was taken out of the system, and everyone could relax. It's the same as Leslie Mulseed. That poor little girl that had special needs. She had physical deformities, very innocent in her mindset, very small in her build, and she was brutally murdered and stabbed in the back many times, which for me would indicate some sort of ritualistic killing, and therefore that might mean that there is an organised coven or something like that involved. But let's just stitch up, that special needs boy down the road with it. Let's stitch him up, and which is exactly what they did.
Do you know if because I believe that with watching different psychology videos and true crime and analysts and stuff like that, that the police can often get someone to confess to a crime that they didn't even commit, especially when you're autistic or have special needs. Do you know if Barry George confessed, or
I'm
did
not
he
sure.
did he say
I'm not.
anything that wasn't necessarily
I,
true?
I'm not sure what the transcript of his interviews are. I'm not sure if
I'll have
he
to have a look.
had any appropriate adult present at the time. I'm not sure, but the jury believed it was him, and they convicted him on the first time round. But of course, deals can be done with people. People have always been stitched up. I'm not saying that the police deal with stitched up. No, not at all. The police deal with some horrible, nasty individuals that need taking off the streets. Cases like Jill Dando, if that was a proper investigation, if that was a just conviction, there wouldn't be an appeal. There wouldn't have been an appeal, and there wouldn't have been an innocent man stitched up for it. Somewhere along the line, they've orchestrated this massive cover up, if that is the case. And the fact that it's still an open case and no one has been brought in, it speaks volumes. But again, like I said earlier on, look at the case of Rachel Nickel and Colin Stagg. Colin Stagg was a weird man. No two ways about it. A very strange man with a questionable private life. But what the police did, they adjunct provocateurs, an undercover officer, to appeal to his perversions, and he sort of, under some bizarre sexual duress, he admitted, not directly, but in sort of subtextually, that he had done it, and they convicted him of that because there was a need for the police to convict someone. There was a need for the public to feel reassured, but at the same time, justice was perverted, and this guy went on to be a continued danger to society, Robert Napper. So
I wonder if Jill Dando was on to the likes of Savile and who's the other one, Rolf Harris, and as you said, like you've alluded speculation. Well, she said it, didn't she? Something about Cliff Richard's not the man that people think he is. I wonder if she was on to these people.
I get annoyed when you hear people saying, "Well, Savile always giving me the creeps." No, come on, man. He wasn't just doing it in plain sight. He was telling the whole world what he was. He was telling them. There were NHS nurses that turned their back while he raped young girls. I spoke to a victim of it. A nurse turned her back. She was in traction. She couldn't move, and he went in and he did that to her. She was an 8-year-old girl in a hospital, I think in Jimmy's in Leeds.
Do you
And the
think they were
nurse just,
scared to say anything though?
did you know, look, you, when you're a public service worker, sector worker, you take an oath to act without fear or favour. How many police officers get frightened and scared? All the time. All the time. You know, what about soldiers when they, of course, what about them lads that went over the top in the trenches? Do you think they weren't scared? Of course they were scared. But if you're going to be scared, don't do the job.
Oh, yeah, don't do the
Give
job.
it to someone with a moral backbone who will do the job. You know, fear without fear or without favour. You know, you must stand up and do the right thing, and you're going to get punished. But the problem is when you whistleblow, like I did, like Lenny Harper did, like Mike Bill did, when you whistleblow on the most abhorrent crimes, which do lead back to the establishment, high levels of authority, right? You stand on your own. No one will stand with you.
I want to lead on to someone else who most people believe was offed because they were about to speak. So I think a lot of thinking people believe that Jill Dando was probably murdered, and it's likely it's because she was going to speak out about some of the wrongings in the industry, your Savills, your Rolf Harrises, potentially and allegedly, say that loud and clear, Cliff Richard, amongst others, maybe Hugh Edwards in there. Who knows? The list goes on and on, really. Now, Jeffrey Epstein was one of the worst who was doing what he was doing, procuring and trafficking. And then he allegedly killed himself in prison. Do you believe that he did? Or do you think that he was actually offed because he was going to reveal some names to save his own skin, maybe?
There's every chance they will give others up in order to protect themselves. But he was a procurer, in my opinion. But if we look at the parallels between Jeffrey Epstein and Fred West, right? We should not underestimate who Fred West was. You know, there's a lot of unsolved murders which I believe are down to this guy, right? Now, Fred West, he died in almost identical circumstances. And there's a lot of question marks around this guy and who he was involved with and connected with. Without doubt, he was connected to local police. On a bigger picture, he may have been the one that procured children for other things. And Epstein was doing the same. Epstein was a businessman and at the same time, a very wealthy businessman, but he was a procurer of children. And I would say anyone who had connections with these people would be highly questionable. When Epstein died, you can imagine the relief that rippled through that community of high and low. And what we are seeing, right, with Epstein, and Prince Andrew was involved, and there was all sorts of people involved, kids from care homes, everything, right? Do you get the likes of Epstein and Prince Andrew going to Poundland and stealing? Do you get the likes of Prince Andrew and Epstein sitting on a park bench and street drinking and shouting abuse at people? No, you don't. Because that crime is not befitting to their economic and socio-economic backgrounds, right? Which shows how dangerous and how powerful there is, because it crosses and it transgresses every single social, religious, economic, whatever boundary. So we will get the likes of Fred West picking up kids from care homes or wherever it might be, on the lower classes, the working classes, sometimes a bottom end of society, if we look at it that way, right? We'll get them doing that because there is a need for them to fulfill a perversion, and also it's good business for them to do so and procure these kids for these parties and everything else, because that's what I think we've got to look at, the bigger thing going on here. And all they ever do, the police, is pick low-hanging fruit. And so he was committing the same crime as Epstein. The total different ends of the spectrum of socioeconomics here. You know, the upper and the ruling classes, and down here the lower and the working classes, doing the same crime in exactly the same manner. And does the twain meet? Of course it does. But when you get down to street drinking and shoplifting, does ever the twain meet with the higher ups? No, never. My point is, people don't speak out about this, right?
No, not many.
They don't speak out about it. It'll be happening to a kid next door. They'll hear the abuse. They'll see it. They know that kid's been hurt and they say nothing.
But
Yet when
Jill was
we had,
trying to speak out about it, and look what happened.
yeah, well, there's a big price to pay.
Yeah.
But you know, have a backbone, you know. And it's like people won't even, they don't even want to talk about it. When lockdown occurred, when the COVID occurred, people were picking up their phones and reporting their neighbours for walking their dogs twice a day.
Oh, it's a joke, innit?
But they weren't ringing up when the little kid was screaming next door.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
when a stepdad was coming round and then hearing the kid crying. They were doing nothing. And what I'm saying is, it might be uncomfortable, right? There might be a backlash, but it's no, your suffering is nothing compared to the suffering of that child.
Well said.
And that's my way of looking at this.
Yeah.
You know, people they were pleading with me, even my family, back down, and I couldn't do it. I needed to see it through to its end. I had to do it. The risks were massive, and I paid a huge price, right? And
Are you
it
glad
left
you've done it though?
Of course. Would I do it again? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've got the strength and the stamina to do it again. But I like to think that the likes of Lenny Harper, that brave man, the likes of Michael Veal, that incredibly stoic individual, have paved the way and have educated society to such a degree that when people do speak out, there's a good chance that they will be believed, whereas before they weren't believed. Look at Jill Dando. Jill Dando, if what you're saying is the truth, Jill Dando was looking at a ring within the British entertainment establishment, which has proved to have been the case, right? It has proved posthumously with Savile, despite many allegations. I had a former detective contact me the other day, and he was on YouTube, Operation YouTube, looking into Savile, and there was a letter from a chief constable to Jimmy Savile, telling him to curtail his activities. And when he took it to his boss went, yeah, but no, that's probably another Jimmy Savile. You know, right, they covered it up. But we knew it was going on. The police knew it was going on, and they did nothing. It was only when they were shamed into it. But there was a lot of misery from the victims and a lot of misery from those who spoke out, the brave ones who spoke out, not the complicit cowards who did nothing. And I will class them as that because I think they are. When kids are being hurt, that's not the time to be quiet. I'm sorry, but it ain't. You know, you've got to do the right thing. A lion must protect the cubs. A lioness must protect her. You've got to do it. And it's painful, but we have to do things sometimes that are painful. Getting up out of bed on a Monday morning with a hangover in the middle of winter can be a nightmare, but you still do that because the detriment of not doing it doesn't justify it. And it's the same as this, right? On a moral level, we need to do it. So Jill Dando was looking at exposing something which potentially might have brought down the establishment. So she gets shot in the face, right? John F. Kennedy criticised, right, the mafia, the Freemasons and the Vatican, the three heavyweighters, right? And he gets shot in the face. Jeffrey Epstein dies in his cell whilst the CCTV's off.
What a load of bollocks that was.
Yeah, the 7/7 bombings, right? All the CCTV in central London was turned off for maintenance that day.
Convenient,
oh, come on. Oh, come on. And we're seeing the same, right? The Hollywood entertainment industry, right, is getting exposed. Yeah. And the next thing, those that might or might not have been involved, their homes are burnt out. Let's hope people wake up. But if they don't believe, it's like my old boss said to me, if you believe Diana died in a crash, you're an effing idiot. You know, so
John, I want you on again. It's funny you mentioned that because I want you on again to talk about that in much more detail about the death of Diana, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for another time maybe, but
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, for another time.
Again, was she onto something? Was she, you know,
was she pregnant? Was she pregnant?
Well, that's it. You know,
heard that.
And why embalm her? They embalmed her straight away. You know.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many anomalies around that.
And the CCTV wasn't working going into the tunnel as well.
Yeah, there's loads of stuff. You
It's
know.
always CCTV's not working. It's always
Yeah, yeah.
convenient, isn't it?
I was told that on a monthly basis, the investigators had to go to meetings, right, where the other side's barrister would be, and they would work out what they're going to ask, what they're not going to ask. I mean, it's just blatant corruption, you know. It's prevent the course of justice, but they did that, and I was told that they could never have Paul Burrell giving evidence because he may potentially have spilled the beans on it. You know, you don't know.
She wrote to him, didn't she, saying that she believes that her life's in danger and it's going to be a
Yeah,
crash and all this kind of stuff.
yeah. She said my husband's
She knew.
planning, me to die in a car crash. Bang on, you know. She was bang on. You know, and then they say, oh, it's a conspiracy because you know, it's look. You can't help people. You can't. What can you do about it? But you know, my call out goes to all those. Don't ignore the suffering of children. Don't ignore the suffering of children.
I think that's a really good place to end because it's kind of full circle. Because Jill Dando was not ignoring the
She won't.
suffering of children. She was trying to expose it. She was doing she was absolutely not ignoring the suffering of children. And
And a call out to Elon Musk. You know, the British government have always covered up people. Please look at the bigger thing going on. And if you
Elon,
don't, you're
if you're
suffering
listening,
continues.
Elon, take note. Take
You
note.
never know. You never know, do you? You
Well,
never know.
who knows? One day, maybe. John, I tell you what, I love having you on. It's always interesting. I love hearing you speak. I love getting your insight into all this kind of stuff. It's not always comfortable listening, but I like you. I am all about um, talking about these kind of things which do go on in the world, exposing it. Thank you for coming on the channel, and I can't wait until you're back on again, and we'll go more into Diana. I'd love to deep dive on that. I want to just say to the audience, like, what do you think? Do you think that Jill Dando was murdered because she was out within the TV industry? Do you think that P Diddy is going to talk? Do you think that he will be off? Do you think that Jeffrey Epstein actually did take his own life? Or do you think that he was offed himself? So like the video, share the video, put your comments down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again, John. Always great, as usual. Bye to John, and to everybody else, peace out.